Hello everyone, welcome back. This is the big one, the event of the year that you've all been waiting for, because today I am back at the Haggerty Festival of the Unexceptional, an event which attracts cars from all over Europe, and it's all the mundane stuff that we used to see on our roads every day that have just disappeared into oblivion. Are you ready for a trip down nostalgia lane? You're watching Mark on Motoring. Welcome back. I hope that you're sitting comfortable with a cup of tea and your favourite selection of biscuits. Today I'm actually starting in the courtyard where the concourse is, because in previous years I've started at the other end, and by the time I've got up here, particularly last year, everything was all but wound down. There is so much to see here at FOTU. You can't possibly see everything in only one day. So let's have a see what cars have made it into the final 50. So we're starting off with a familiar face and a familiar car. I'm joined by Simon from Lot 76 Cars.
Mark, good to see you
Simon. You've brought along your 190E, which I've reviewed on the channel a few years ago.
I have. I've somehow locked myself into concourse. I'm not quite sure how, to tell you the truth, but I'm here. And I think it's maybe the first Merc 190. I don't think I've ever seen one in the concourse before. Maybe I'll stand corrected by some of the subscribers on that, but yeah, I haven't seen one before.
Yeah, I mean, there's an excellent turnout of cars here today, isn't there?
There's a lot of rare, but nobody cares, and it's unfortunate because you've got cars like this Subaru Justy over there,
yeah,
four-wheel drive. When do you see them, especially survivors like that in purple? That's immaculate.
I think that really is the essence of Concours, because I would have walked past that and at a glance I would have seen a Suzuki Swift.
Yeah, and anybody who's here hopefully will have seen there's a 10,000 mile from new Toyota Carina GL Exec. I mean, 10,000 miles from new. The guy never used it hardly. It was locked away in his garage. But thankfully we have these survivors at a show like this. This is the place to bring them, where people are interested in cars that were street furniture.
Oh, exactly.
And you saw them everywhere, and now seeing them is a bit of an occasion. So
yeah, well, it's one place you can go to a car meet and see people crowding around getting excited by an MPV.
I know, it's a bit, and I'm one of those, so I'm a bit the same. I can get, I think I get less excited at Ferrari show, because there are some really rare cars here where it is the last of the breed.
Yeah.
There is one left, and that car's here.
Yeah.
So hopefully get a chance to pick out a few of those, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. How have you found the Concours experience so far? It must be quite daunting.
A little bit. I mean, I must admit, I didn't sleep a lot last night thinking whether the car's quite up to the standard, but we're here anyway. I've done lots of little jobs that I was putting off, really small items that don't affect the run of the car, but I thought, well, let's give it the best chance. I mean, no time for a total repaint or anything like that, but trim parts, door cards, I've replaced part of the dashboard vents, I've replaced the boot seal at the back and a few jobs like that, but just general jobs, nothing major mechanical really, to be fair.
And as you correctly pointed out earlier, in a way you've already won because you're here.
Exactly.
Final 50.
I'm more than happy to get into the 50 cars at this event. Actually to be all in the same place. I think sometimes some of the cars were outside the main ring. Actually is a real result for me.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased with that. Thank you.
Yeah. Right, well, Simon will also be attempting to try and shoot some video today. I don't know how much you'll actually get done, Simon, with doing the concourse. I'm going to try my best,
but it might be difficult. This time I've got to stand near the car and not move about too much, so I'm trying my best.
Yeah, but nobody, with the exception of Josie Floyd, will get every car, so obviously Simon will get some stuff that I haven't, and I know that I'll get some of the stuff that Simon won't, so there'll be plenty for you to watch.
Excellent.
Right, best of luck, Simon.
Everybody. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Now here's a familiar friend, the Mark II Renault Clio. This is a really, really early example. They came out in '98. That is on an R, so it's probably not long before the registration change. In platinum as well, same colour as two of the ones that I had and one that my dad owned. Interesting thing with this car, it's actually an RN grand. Windy windows, which I didn't realise they had windy windows in that spec. Also, we've got no display on top of the dash for the radio, and because it's such an early car, it's actually got the early instrument cluster with the speedometer centrally mounted. By the time I got mine on a W, that had changed, and Renault had gone to a sort of one-size-fits-all instrument cluster that went into a few different models within the range. But really, really nice to see that one. But it's nice to see an event where even something as utilitarian as an MPV can be shone under the spotlight. Now here's one that I've not actually seen before, though it may look very familiar. I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation. A Lancia Zeta. Looks very much like a Fiat Ulysses, or there was a Peugeot and a Citroën equivalent all on this same platform. But yeah, the Lancia version we never got here in the UK. Limitless possibilities with seats that swivel round and drop down and do all sorts of amazing things that none of today's modern SUVs can match. It actually looks to be in very good condition as well, which is really rare for an MPV, because let's face it, most of them did just get used and abused. Certainly in Europe, probably even more so than the UK, you often find family cars just get used and used and used to the point of death. But no, this is really, really nice. Now moving on from there, we've actually got another Renault Clio. This time it's a Mark 1, but a Phase 3 facelift, so quite a late one, on a P registration, so that's around 96, 97. This one is a Clio Oasis. I actually remember the Oasis, which was a special edition. I think they actually did an Oasis in some earlier phases of this car as well. Back in the day, they used to do quite a lot of these special editions where they took a fairly lowly spec car, threw on a few extra things there just to sort of smarten them up and shift a few cars out of the door. So Graham, it's always nice to see a family car, a station wagon, yes, that's type of thing that gets well used. This particular one that you brought, though, looks to be in absolutely fantastic condition. Are you sure it hasn't been in a museum all its life?
It looks as though it should have been, but it was bought originally by someone who worked for Buchanan's, the Glasgow dealer.
Okay.
He was a technician there, apparently. He used it sparingly, set up his own independent Volvo garage, and it got used less and less and less. Serviced every year, MOT'd every year, and then it got to the point where it just didn't get used.
Right.
And it came out and was reconditioned a few years ago, so I've been told.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough to get it last November, and it's been cleaned, serviced, and very little else. The interior is totally original.
Yeah.
If you like red vinyl seats that get very hot on a sunny day,
yeah,
it's fantastic. And the reason I've got it is Mum and Dad had one. They had the identical car.
Okay.
White with red trim when I was 12. I remember them buying it.
Yeah.
I remember helping Dad fit the tow bar on it.
It's the nostalgia, isn't it? I've done exactly the same.
Yeah.
I've done the same thing, come in a car like one my dad owned. Maybe not quite an exact carbon copy like you found, but nostalgia is a powerful thing, isn't it?
It is. You get to an age where nostalgia does kick in. But when you set yourself the challenge of finding a very specific car, and it has to be that colour, that trim, that exact model, which was only available for one model year, when I found it, it had to be. And then we live in Lincolnshire, the car was for sale in Scotland. We'd already got a trip to Scotland planned for November when we saw the car. I spoke to the guy, and Scotland's a big country, but this was for sale in the village in Scotland we were going to be staying in.
Blimey.
Meant to be.
Yeah, definitely meant to be, isn't it?
So I went up by train and drove it back, and the rest is now history, and we're lucky enough to be here today in the top 50. It's going to be at the NEC in November on the Volvo Enthusiast Club stand.
Oh, okay.
They've asked to have the car there because it's a little bit different, because the big bumper cars are never as popular because they're not as pretty.
Right, okay.
It's the same as a rubber bumper MGB. People learn to love them.
Was this, I presume this was done for the American market then?
Yeah, the North American market had to have the energy absorbing bumpers.
Yeah.
But Volvo, it seems, got to 5 o'clock Friday and thought, oh, we haven't got a bumper. So it's not pretty, but it's practical, and it was just one model year they had those bumpers on before they became more and more fed into the car.
Yeah.
That's that big bumper,
right,
which is a very practical seat.
Yeah. What have we got power in this large estate car?
You've got a massive 2 litre pushing out approximately 90 brake horse.
Yeah.
So it's never going to be quick.
No.
4-speed manual gearbox, no overdrive. Proper mechanical gear change. You know you're changing gear.
Yeah.
No power steering, no electric windows. It's great. Just love it. I love the way it drives. It's so different to a modern car, but it's comfortable. It's obviously very safe.
Yeah. It's the essence of car. It's everything you need and probably nothing you don't.
It's the epitome of the antique dealer's estate car.
Yeah.
It's pure Middle England. Think back to The Good Life with Jerry and Margot in The Good Life. They had a mustard-coloured Volvo estate. It's the ultimate middle-class estate car, but I just love it.
Yeah. And this one obviously proving that these things really did stand the test of time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this one's had a very sheltered life, obviously.
Yeah.
A huge number have ended their life on the banger track.
Yeah.
And in Europe, they still have Volvo-only races, which you can look at on YouTube, and it's you have to be of strong constitution not to shed a tear when you're seeing these 30 or 40 Volvo estates going around the track. But
Yeah.
hey, it's their car.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
going out in a blaze of glory.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Graham, and I notice you've got a fantastic picnic in the boot there, so
Oh, yeah,
I'm going to leave you in peace and let you enjoy your picnic.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye
Cheers.
now.
Well, it's always nice to see a Mark 1 Fiat Punto. A lot of the ones these that survive seem to be convertibles that I always seem to see, but this one is a 5-door hatchback, and this one is a selector, so it's got a CVT gearbox in there. It's also a 60 as well, so they did a 55, which was the sort of base model 1100. This one is a 1.2, so a little bit more power, and this one is a sort of mid-range spec car as well. I notice we've got some fog lamps in there inserted into these lovely grey plastic bumpers. Really was a different time, wasn't it? And the Punto was quite a big deal actually when these came out. In fact, drop something in the comments. From memory, I seem to recall these maybe being car of the year around, would it have been about 94? Again, gets a bit sketchy up here sometimes, so if anyone knows, do drop me that in the comments. But yeah, they were so spacious as well, and they were very sort of slab-like at that back end. Just made for a really, really useful car. Anyway, another small car that I've got a little bit of nostalgia for is the Vauxhall Corsa B. I've never really been a huge Vauxhall fan, but I do remember these coming out. They always look quite good with the little wheel arch spats and everything. Certainly a departure from the Nova, which was very angular. These were obviously very, very curvy. This is obviously a pre-facelift car, so we've got the original grille on there as well. Again, black bumpers. This one is an LS trim, but it does have the addition of some nice, very period 3-spoke alloy wheels. The owner has popped some wheel trims down here as well to show what the car would have originally had on. This one's also a 1.2 litre engine, and it's got a 5-speed gearbox as well, which again, a 5-speed now probably sounds very, very basic. We're used to sort of 6-speed manuals and more in a lot of autos, but back when these cars were on sale, you could still buy them with 4-speed gearboxes, so having that 5-speed would have been quite a big deal at the time. Well, I think there's a little more exciting than a fairly basic small car with something a little bit extra. Ford Fiesta Mark III, this particular one though is a style, and it's got a 1.4 litre engine. Oh yeah, back in the day would have definitely gone mad for something like that. Most of the Fiestas a lot of us would have been running around in would have probably been a 1.1 litre, so a 1.4 would have been a big deal, and probably would have had a 5-speed gearbox as well. Metallic paint on this one. We've actually got some blue inserts on the side strips and on the rear bumper, and check out the interior on this car. Modern car interiors are so bland, but just look at the colour of that one. You definitely wouldn't fall asleep at the wheel in a car with an interior as brightly coloured as that. Now, Ford always knew their buyer, and they tended to be quite conservative about many things. Unlike Citroën, next to this car we've got a Citroën Visa. Yeah, definitely something a bit more unusual. Check out those control stalks inside. I think it might take a bit of getting used to operate those. A few interesting Japanese cars here today. Got a Datsun 280C over there, a station wagon that I have never seen before. It looks really interesting actually. It's a 7-seater, and one of the few cars I've ever seen to have 2 windscreen wipers on the rear window. And obviously some people get quite excited about that sort of thing. I think that one might even be for sale as well. Another one that caught my eye that I've not seen before is this Nissan Laurel. Silhouette wise, it's just a 3-box saloon, very much like a Bluebird, but it certainly looks a far more luxurious model. I honestly can't recall having seen one of these in the UK before. Now, we do seem to have quite a lot of chrome on this car. The grille, around the headlamps, all around the windows, even at the bottom of the windscreen on the skull, we've got bits of chrome trim. It's they do seem to like a lot of chrome in on cars in certain Asian markets. As you'd expect in a Concourse, an immaculate looking car, and a very rare car at that. One I am a little bit more familiar though with is the Bluebird. You used to see a lot of these parked up outside taxi ranks, but not so much on people's driveways. They weren't as popular as some of the established European brands. That said, though, that Japanese reliability must be the reason so many were run as taxis. I actually got the opportunity to drive a version of this car in the Philippines about 20 years ago, badged as a Maxima, but essentially the same car. That was equipped with a 2-litre petrol engine, and even at the point I drove it, it was already a car that had been long since gone out of production, and it actually drove exceptionally well. And in hindsight, it does make me wonder, could this have been the pick of the bunch back in the day if he was able to go back in time and test drive all the cars in that segment? I think this one would have fared exceptionally well. James, you've got this fantastic Bluebird behind us. Tell us a little bit about this car and why you went with it.
Yeah, so I bought the car in 2019. Wanted something that was a bit retro, a bit different, and wanted something that I could use to go to work and use as a daily car. I managed to find it on a forum, and a father was giving up driving, so the son had advertised the car for sale on a group. I snapped him up straight away, went and looked at the car, and I mean, the condition speaks for itself. It was completely original, one owner, 48,000 miles at the time, and drove it home and just couldn't believe what I'd been able to pick up. So I've had to do some light work on it, some tyres, exhaust, brakes, but I've tried to be really mindful of whenever I've been replacing them using the things it would have had. So the exhaust was custom made to the shape of the original. The tyres are a Falcon tyres, which is a really good make for this car and period to the era. And then really it's just had a detail, and I've not had to do much else. Surprisingly, the red is still original, the paintwork's still original. And,
it's kept really well, hasn't it?
Yeah, so it doesn't fade at all, so it's kept really well.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier when I was looking at another Bluebird, I think these kind of went a bit under the radar for the British public at the time, and in hindsight they were probably one of the better cars that was available.
Yeah, I think they were very understated, and you'd see them everywhere on the streets, and you'd know somebody that would have one, but they weren't necessarily the car that you would think of buying yourself. But you just always knew of them, and then all of a sudden they just disappeared overnight.
Of course. What, out of interest, what engine's in this one, James?
So this one's a 1.6.
Okay.
And it's an overhead cam, and yeah, it's not going to break any speed limits. It's I think about 83 brake horsepower, so it's not very fast. But to be honest, you're not really going to buy a Bluebird for its speed.
No.
But its comfort, reliability, it's got it in space.
To be honest, I've driven a 2-litre one, and I wouldn't have called that fast either. But the thing is that the Japanese are renowned for high quality and often quite advanced engines. You look at Honda with their multi-valve engines and things of the time. The Japanese were probably a decade ahead of many other manufacturers, weren't they?
Exactly, yeah, and that's why with this one, I realised obviously with the condition it was too clean to keep using every day. So I parked it up, but thought to myself, well, what else am I going to drive? So I bought myself another Bluebird, and I do use that daily. And it serves itself as a really good, practical, retro classic car.
Yeah.
So, still keeps up with modern traffic, and still good to drive.
And you've had a bit of a drive up here in this one today, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've come from Kent. So it's about 120 miles, made it with no issues, touch wood. Hopefully the return journey will be the same.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, cheers. Thanks very much.
It's nice to see Chris's Renault Twingo here. I actually interviewed Chris last year at the NEC on the Twingo stand. Now generally Mark 1 Twingos were in sort of bright colours, so you could get like a yellow, a green, a red, or they did what they call blue, which was actually purple to most people's eyes. Again, left-hand drive car, never sold in the UK. Turned 30 years old last year, and ever since then they just seem to have exploded in popularity. Every other week I seem to see somebody on Facebook that's imported one of these cars into the UK. Now this one is a little bit rarer than most because this is actually a van version, and it's in white. Now, I've had a chat with Chris about this, and apparently the way this came about, these vehicles, as I say, Renault wanted them all in bright colours, but there were certain markets that basically demanded a white one. So Renault bowed to popular demand, and here we are. A car that certainly isn't white, a much brighter colour, is this Corsa Merit. This one, unlike the one we've already seen, is a very basic model, so it's even got steel wheels. There's no wheel trims, no side rubbing strips on there. Yeah, just a really nice original looking car, and a very, very 90s colour as well. Next to that, actually, we have a car that I've got fond memories of, because my wife's first car was indeed a Ford Ka. This one's a little bit earlier, and it's got the sort of generic plastic bumpers. The one we had was a bit later, so it had colour-coded bumpers and air conditioning and alloy wheels and a few other niceties. Again, this will be the original engine, so I think from memory these are about 60 horsepower. The one we had was a revised version with a little bit more power, but generally they didn't get many engines in these cars. It was either a 1.3 or later on there were the sport car and the street car, where you could have a 1.6, which was still a fairly rudimentary 8-valve engine. But yeah, really, really nice cars these. Anyone that's ever driven one of these, they're incredibly good fun to drive. I know the styling was very divisive in the day, and maybe still is, but as I say, to me this is the true spiritual successor to the original Mini, because a lot of the other sort of retro inspired cars that came along, they always charged a bit of a premium for. These were quite affordable cars. They had a wheel in each corner. They had a fantastic gearbox. Ford really, really knew how to do a manual gearbox in this era. If you ever get the opportunity to try one of these, I highly recommend you do so. Another Ford Fiesta here in blue. I remember seeing a lot of those around. Ford Escort Mark IV with genuine Ford headlamp protectors. Nice to see that one. Lada. So yeah, we do get a lot of sort of Eastern European and sort of Soviet era cars as well in the UK. They're becoming quite popular these days. This one being a Lada estate, and it looks quite an early one with those round headlamps as well. So to those in the know, these are pretty much a Fiat design that was reworked for the harsher environments of the Soviet Union. Triumph Acclaim, so always nice to see those again to my left. Anyone guess what this badge is? No? So it's a Zastava Yugo. Yep, the Yugo was actually on sale in the UK, but again, they weren't a particularly popular car at the time. They were, again, one of these cars where you would have bought one of these new as opposed to buying a second-hand version, maybe a 3 or 4 year old car from a more established European manufacturer. But yeah, this is what FOTU is all about, cars like this that we just don't see anymore. Got a couple of nice Peugeots here. We've got this lovely 309 style, 3-door as well. I can't remember the last time I saw a 3-door Peugeot 309 that wasn't a GTI. In fact, come to think of it, you don't actually see many GTIs either. Peugeot 106 XN, I really, really like these. This is actually a pre-facelift 106 as well, which in my opinion is the best looking version. Yeah, fairly basic by today's standards. I always remember when these came out, a really unique feature of these cars was the radio, because the radio was a very unique fit, that it was a bit deeper than a standard DIN size. So if someone pinched the radio, it wouldn't fit in a standard DIN fitting in another car. Incidentally, while I mentioned the radio, it's something that this car doesn't actually appear to have. 1.1 litre engine as well. Now, I seem to think from memory the 106 was available with engines from a 1 litre, so yeah, somebody must have paid a bit extra to get a bit more power under the bonnet. Well, I think I've succeeded in quite a feat today. I found one car that Joseph Lloyd will not be able to talk about in the concourse, because of the engine. Rover 418, the 1.8 was in fact the diesel engine. This particular one is a GSD, so yeah, a really plush model. We've got all the velour and everything in there, and the walnut, just the way I remember them. And obviously these cross-spoke wheel trims, yes, that's right, they are not alloy wheels, they're in fact wheel trims. K registration as well. Now, interestingly, on the K registration cars, well, when we first saw these elongated side repeaters, now the grille actually arrived on these saloon versions, the 400 series first, and a lot of buyers like them, so Rover ended up eventually conceding and adding them onto the 200 as well. But initially it was done to sort of help elevate the model above the 200 series version. A great colour as well, isn't it? I really, really like these cars, and at some point I am going to have to have a go in an R8 at some point, because I've got a lot of nostalgia for these cars, with my grandfather actually having owned a couple of R8s back in the day. Something you wouldn't have thought to have seen back in the day, a Lada and a BMW E30 being judged in a competition next to each other. Yeah, really bizarre thing, but how times have changed. Obviously the Lada Defender pretty much was a budget saloon car back in the 1980s and 90s, and often the butt of all jokes. Obviously not anymore. These days there are quite a following for these cars. BMW E30 though, well, they've always been quite a popular car, and again, prices, as with many of these cars, has risen in recent years. This particular one is a two-door saloon version, and yeah, it's a 316 as well, so yeah, about as basic as they come. They even got steel wheels on it as well. Who'd have thought a day where you used to get BMWs where they had basic steel wheels? That's just a sign of how times really have changed. Now, something I would probably see quite often at classic car shows as opposed to Festival Unexceptional are things like Ford Cortinas. That said though, this particular one is a Mark IV, and really don't see many Mark IVs. Stephen, this is your car.
Yeah.
The Mark IVs, did they have a particularly short run, or did they not survive very well?
Yeah, they were made from 76 to 79. The Mark IIIs were made from 70 to 76, the Mark Vs from 79 to 82, and apparently they're the least surviving Cortina.
Oh, right.
It's probably because as the Mark V came out, it's the old style.
Yeah.
And you know, they were made in smaller numbers than the Mark III.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be honest, at a glance, without looking at the lights and things, you could easily mistake a Mark IV for a 5 anyway, couldn't you? They're a very similar looking car.
They are. The roof line is, the doors are higher on a Mark V.
Oh, right, okay.
They got the wraparound indicators on the front,
Yep.
wraparound bumpers, they had an aerofoil grille, different back panel.
Bigger tail lights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so although the Mark IV estate and Mark V estate are very, very similar in terms of the main body structure and the doors, the Mark V and 4 saloons are very, very different in terms of door. Same doors from there down, but different door frames, different roof. The inner wings and chassis rails on the front are slightly different shape and things like that.
Yeah. This one certainly looks to be in good condition, Stephen. Have you had this one a long time?
Yeah, my mum and dad bought it in August 79. He was a year old.
Oh,
It
right.
was registered on the 1st of August 78. Mum and dad bought it on the 11th of August 79 and they had delivery on the 13th. The next day then we went down to painting and holidays in it.
Yeah.
So hence why I got the newspaper from. I tried to do it exactly when when we first had it, so like being
Yeah.
on the back seat and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's,
So I've had it from July 88. I learned to drive in it, and it was my first car.
right.
So I've had it since July 88 myself.
Yeah, I think what a lot of us wouldn't give to have our first car back, or even better still, a car that, as you say, you pretty much grew up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 10 when mum and dad bought this, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's brilliant, and obviously today that all culminates in having this car here at in the concourse, and the judges are actually not far away, so I think you'll be coming to have a look at this car soon.
They've been around.
Yeah.
They've been around.
Oh, they've
yeah.
already been here, have
Yeah.
they?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Excellent.
So yeah.
Super.
So it's the furthest it's been. It's done about 200 miles today each way.
Yeah.
So it's the furthest it's been since about 1990 when I last drove it up to Newcastle with work. So
Right.
yeah.
So these days, just high days, holidays, the odd show maybe. Yeah.
You dare not. These days, you dare not leave it out.
No.
I don't leave it out anyway in the weather, and it's not the sort of car these days. Now I like to park in Tesco's or anything like that in case
No, definitely not.
somebody open the door into it or trolley or anything else.
Yeah.
Because although we might appreciate cars, I don't think some.
Not everybody does, do they?
everybody does.
Unfortunately, yeah. But no, it certainly does look splendid. Do you know what this particular shade of red is?
It's called Jupiter Red.
Jupiter red, yeah, it really suits it, doesn't it? It's and obviously we've got this sort of creamy coloured interior, and of course the vinyl roof, which was
metallic pink was an optional extra.
Yeah.
The roof was an optional extra, and the passenger door mirror was.
right,
So,
yeah. We do easily forget, don't we, the things that were
Yes.
extra on cars back in the day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you.
much, Mark. All the best.
Nice to see this Fiat Brava as well. It was quite unusual back in the day for a manufacturer to do a platform like this with two different body styles. Usually they would just either have 3 doors or 5 doors, but this one is a different body style entirely. So you had the Bravo, which was a 3-door hatchback, completely different rear end, and this one is the 5-door fastback as Fiat marketed it back in the day. Tail lights in particular, you've got these 3 slashes on this car, whereas on the other car it was a big cluster with a round lamping, so a little bit different. But again, it's one of these cars that seems to have disappeared into obscurity over time. 1.6 litre 16 valve engine, which again, A lot of cars in this segment would have still had 8-valve engines, certainly on the lesser models back in the day. This one is an SX, so it's a sort of mid-range trim. We've got niceties like colour-coded bumpers, for example, on there, because yes, if you had a base model car, you could still get grey plastic bumpers even then. That's excellent. Next car we're going to have a look at, and one of the last ones here in this outer section of the concourse. We've got a Toyota Hilux. Famously, you'll remember Top Gear tried to destroy one unsuccessfully. This one certainly looks in far better condition than the one on Top Gear, though. God blimey, nearly 2 o'clock already, and I haven't actually got out with this courtyard yet. Alfa Romeo 145, this is the 1.6 and it's a boxer engine, so a fairly basic one and a fairly early one at that. Most of these cars later on got the twin spark engines, but yeah, this has actually got the boxer engine in, so really nice to see. Behind me we've actually got a very early Austin Metro on a W plate in that really nice bright sort of vivid lime green colour. Beyond that, a Reliant Robin, so yeah, we've definitely got a good mix of cars here. Actually going a little bit lightweight now because I'm not going to get around all this anyway, so I'm just going to have a quick shoot round, try and show you a few cars around here while we're on the field. One I do want to have a look at here, we've got a Renault 12, very nice looking car. I think I've seen this one here actually in a previous year. I'm actually quite liking this Talbot here, camper van. These Talbot and Fiat vans, you never actually seem to see them as anything other than campers, unless that's just the models that have survived. Something else over here of interest, Yugo Sana. If I'm not mistaken, this is probably one that many of you will have seen on YouTube on various other channels already. The Ford Escort here I actually recognise from a social media post, and that's the Mark V Escort belonging to Sean at Morsels and Motors, one of his more recent acquisitions, I think. As you know, Sean likes his base model cars, so this is a fairly basic car actually. 1990 1.3 Popular in all its glory, with its steel wheels, no trims or anything on there. Certainly wouldn't have such decadence. Obviously I'm here in the Mark 1 Megane Coupe that you'll have seen many times before on the channel if you're already a viewer. Subaru Justy, yeah, that's the one that was in the concourse last year. I actually interviewed Hugo, who fetched that car last year. In fact, we've got 2 cars next to me that were formerly in the concourse. This Laguna was in the concourse last year. Actually, I picked this one out because this is a Mark 1 Phase 1, but it's an RTI, so it's got the Volvo N-Series engine, the 2-litre 16-valve. Absolutely cracking car, and you never see that model. You just tend to see things like RTs, maybe the odd RXE, but usually the 8-valve cars. Scenic, which again, I think I might have seen that car here before. Now this car behind me I do want to have a look at. This is well, it's actually badged as a Honda Jazz, but yeah, in some markets it was actually known as a Honda City. This one actually has the matching Moto Compo motorcycle. Obviously these ones both in red. The reason I want to pick on this is I've actually been making arrangements to go and actually review one of these cars, so I've been offered a Honda City Turbo with the matching Motor Compo, so hopefully I'll be getting that filmed at some point later this year. I do love a nice Citroen XM, and next up we've got a lovely CRX as well. I do like the shape on these Citroen Visa. I do like this nice Citroen AX here as well. I've not actually driven an AX before. I have actually driven the car that came after this though, the Saxo. I had to go in a VTR last year. Essentially under the skin though, these and the Peugeot 106, pretty much the same car. And another Mark II Clio RN Grand, this very much like the one that's in the concourse. This one in Monaco blue though. Now this Clio Grand is actually more like the one I own. This has got the later revised instruments, and it's also got that radio display high up in the middle of the car as well. Quite like this Punto SX, and this one's actually got some rather interesting looking wheels. I think they may be aftermarket wheels, but they do certainly suit the car. If you want to see a real unicorn, check this out. Innocenti. I don't think I've actually seen one of these other than in pictures and video before. These cars are incredibly small, and it was a sort of more modern 70s take on a Mini, and yeah, As I say, I'm surprised at how small this car actually is, but the styling of the time must have actually looked very modern. Oh, Talbot Alpine, 5-speed. As I said earlier, that would have been actually quite a big deal back in the day when this car was new. This Danbury conversion it looks quite cool as well. So you've got your pop top in there, and obviously inside everything's set up for tea time, and the owner's got taste, because look, we've got Yorkshire tea in there as well. That's fantastic. I really like this. Yeah, maybe one day. What is it they always say? Adventure before dementia? A couple of BXs back there. What else have we got here? A Proton that I think a few of you will probably recognise. Oh, lovely 205. Is that what I think it is? Oh yeah, this is exactly what I thought it is. See, 205 Gentry. So these use the 1.9 litre engine, but it was a sort of detuned version of the one found in the GTI. This one's got an automatic gearbox as well, but this was Peugeot's attempt at a luxury model, very much like the Renault 5 Monaco or Baccara. Oh, Fiesta Flight, I remember those as well. I always remembered how these had the sort of two-tone styling, and they came with those alloy wheels that look like the ones on the XR2i. Really nice. I like the colour blue as well. So we've had a Volvo 145 earlier, but check this out. Volvo 144. That's absolutely stunning. Look at it with those white walls and the chrome. Again, lovely bright coloured paintwork. This is definitely not the kind of thing that you would call unexceptional. In fact, I think this would do quite well at any classic car show that you would attend. I always quite like the Triumph Spitfire. That one looks fantastic in that yellow, but perhaps more in keeping with the theme of today, this Talbot. This is another car that I've actually missed from previous year's concourse, Talbot Horizon. Yeah, it's a great little car, but sadly a marque that's no longer with us, at least not in the same form anymore. Oh, and check out that, is that velour? Wow. You just don't see interiors like that in cars anymore. Yeah, I've still got a bit of an itch for a Fiat Coupe at some point as well. Rather nice Mercedes C-Class there. We've had a couple of BXs here today. This one's an estate. Volvo 480 with the pop-up lights, I love those. Peugeot 405 estate. This has got to be one of the best looking estate cars of the 1980s and 90s. I think at that time estate cars just weren't as good looking as they are today. Got a very tidy Citroen ZX here, 1.9 diesel. My uncle actually had a normally aspirated 1.9 diesel ZX. This particular car though, well, it's absolutely immaculate. This one's an automatic, which again with a lot of cars of this era, seems the automatics are the ones that survived. I think they were just bought by elderly drivers who didn't drive as far and who cherished the cars. This one's in Advantage spec, and oh, I do love that Loyal Snail sticker as well. In fact, I think I've seen one of those with the full sort of Royal Mail style logo on. Now, a couple of cars here I do want to have a quick look at is the Mark 1 Ford Focus. Hard to believe these have been around so long now. When these cars first came out around around 99, I think it would have been, they really did move the game on considerably from the Escort. And one of these cars just so happens to belong to someone whose car I've had on the channel before. David, I've actually reviewed one of your cars before. I took the 205 out.
Oh yeah, 205. A few
yeah.
years ago that, wasn't it?
This probably is now. Yeah, well, I think it's probably one of the first reviews I did on the channel. But you've been splashing the cash, and you've
I have.
you've bought this pinnacle of blue oval luxury.
Yeah, this has replaced the Ford Fusion that I had, which wasn't very exciting, and I've always wanted a Mark 1. So, yeah, got this.
Mark 1s are rare enough, but
2001 registered saloon.
Yeah, so it's a pre-facelift car.
So it's a pre-facelift, yeah.
In a saloon.
Yeah.
In gear spec as well.
It's like double rare, isn't it?
Triple rare.
And in this sort of Pacific green it's called, but it was sort of a pre-facelift only colour.
Right.
So yeah. But yeah, it's a 1.8 yeah, gear with a few options on it. So
that petrol engine or diesel?
1.8 petrol, yeah.
Yeah.
The Z-Tech units, but yeah, it drives beautifully. 56,000 miles.
Yeah. Now I know when the Focus came out, I remember obviously I think there was a 2 litre as well, weren't there?
There was.
And there was a 1.6.
Yeah.
Now the 1.6 at the time, a lot of the motoring press lauded it and said it performed more like a 2 litre.
Oh right.
How do you find the 1.8?
I don't actually find this. It's not particularly quick, to be honest.
Right.
For a 1.8, I don't. It's got 115, I think, horsepower.
Okay.
But yeah, it sort of just cruises along, but you wouldn't call it fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, they were famed for the
suits me.
handling, though, weren't they? We
It
had
handles
that.
really well, yeah.
Ford spent a lot of money on that rear suspension, didn't they?
As soon as literally the first time I drove it and I turned into a bend, yeah, you could feel it straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah, the steering's so positive.
Right.
Yeah,
Excellent.
No, it really does handle well for a
Brilliant.
a family run around, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hopefully
yeah.
I can prize this one off you at some point, and we'll get it
yeah.
out for a drive. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll have to do that one time, won't we?
definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's a lot to see here, David. I hope you enjoyed the show today.
Yeah,
And
yes, it's been fantastic. Good weather, good company.
yeah,
Lots of YouTubers.
yeah, just a few.
Yeah, we like to see everyone, don't we?
Well, we do, don't we? Right, anyway, I'm going to crack on. Nice seeing you again, David.
All right,
and as I
thank
say,
you.
we'll have to arrange to get this one out on and driven on the channel soon.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Right, thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you.
See you later. On German plates, we've got this Rover R8 214i, 3-door as well. They always look good in racing green, but the 3 doors in particular look really, really nice. You just don't really see that many of them now. I think the majority sold were probably 5 doors, and the 3 doors are actually quite sought after now. Just note this Citroen Zara here that's been put into its off-road position, as you can see. Look, so that's sat really high on its hydro-pneumatic suspension. Nice Cavalier SRI and an Astra as well, SRI spec. Actually got an interview with a Cavalier SRI owner here just last year, but the car I did want to show you is this Audi. So Paul's a lucky owner of this Audi A2. Now these cars are very different to Audis of today. The whole design ethos, it were quite innovative, aluminium bodied and incredibly aerodynamic, meaning that these cars are actually very, very efficient. Paul, how long have you owned this one?
So this one, just over 4 years.
Okay.
So this one I bought for my now eldest son to learn to drive in. Because insurance is actually quite good on it as well.
Okay.
So it's a good first car to learn in. He's now at uni, so the idea is that once he's finished uni, he's then got a car to take away and cherish and look after from there on.
Right.
And I've got a younger son who's 16, and I've just bought another one for him to have and do the same process all over again.
So this one's a petrol engine?
No, 1.4 diesel.
It's a diesel, this one?
Three-cylinder diesel.
Okay.
Yeah, so 75 brake horsepower. Doesn't sound a lot, but being aluminium bodied, it's under a ton.
Yeah.
Which then makes the power to weight ratio quite nice. It's quite nicely geared. It does actually feel quite a brisk thing. Keeps up with modern traffic. Surprises a few.
What's fuel economy like? Because it was supposed to be very good on these.
Okay, so there's a 3-litre diesel, but there's not a 3-litre diesel. It's it was the German version. It was capable of 100 kilometres on 3 litres of diesel. That was the principle.
Okay.
And that was a 1.2 auto.
Yep.
And that's incredible. And it would do over that. It would be a 2.8 in real terms. 2.8 litres to 100 kilometres.
Yeah.
This isn't that far behind. The claim is a maximum of about 80 miles to the gallon. Have done a little bit of bench testing, and I can get quite close to that. So it's not quite 3 litres to the 100 kilometres, but it's good enough to.
What about just general daily, if you're not trying?
Oh, not trying. 50s, absolutely fine. 50, 55 miles to the gallon on a daily run.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Pretty impressive, really. Yeah.
So yeah, it's got a few little styling designs, such as if you put an Audi TT next to it, you'll notice the wheel arches sort of follow the lines.
Yeah.
So it looks quite similar. And there's a little party trick that I don't know how mobile you are with your camera. Would you like to see its party trick?
Okay.
Here we go. Right, which is the service hatch. So instead of a conventional bonnet, you have that. So you have your oil, your dipstick, and your screen wash. The idea is that that's all you will need in between servicing. You don't have to touch the car in between, and that's all you need to do. But then, if you do need to take the bonnet off, because it's all aluminium, no bonnet hinge, the whole bonnet comes off in one.
Right.
Which is always a good little party trick. I'm going to try and line the thing up. There we go, and we're back on. Ready for its next 10,000 miles before its next service.
So they've actually split things up a little bit today. Rather than the concourse and then just the field full of cars all the way down, we've got sort of split into 2 sections, which means we've got this little bit in the middle with a few cars in and a few gazebos of various things. And then over the other side, we've got this sort of marquee area as well. And straight past the Ferrari Mondial, that I've actually featured one of those before, believe it or not, to a Renault 5 Campus. Obviously, I do quite like these, as regular viewers will know. Obviously, a few criticisms of previous years at FOTU have been things like traffic getting in, so they've extended the hours today, and they had multiple entrances. And another thing was availability and how long they had to wait for food. So again, they seem to have answered that question this year with a lot more food vendors. It's quite good that they've been positioned central as well. And we've got a few previous year's winners here as well that you may have seen at previous FOTUs. Yeah, we're into the second section of field now. It's just like before we go down there, I just want to point out this coffee truck, because we've actually got a coffee truck that's on an old, what is that? Is that a Peugeot J? I forget the number of these vans. I actually did see one as a camper at a show last year. Was it a J7 or something? I forget. If you know, let me know in comments. But yeah, look at that old Peugeot van. And then we've got another one here that's an old fire engine. I think that's fantastic. But anyway, we're getting distracted by food and when I'm not even eating as well. Because I won't even get in a fraction of the amazing selection of vehicles that are here today. But hopefully by running down here with the camera before everybody leaves, we might actually capture a few. Lovely 205. And I've got to have a look at this, a Triumph Courier. I've never seen one of these before. Now I did actually see a Herald Estate at the NEC just back in March, and I've not seen one of those before either. I've seen plenty of saloons and convertibles over the years, but yeah, it's always nice to see a new variant. That's definitely quite a cool thing, isn't it? Now here is a real find. Mark 1 Renault 5, but this is a really early car. And the reason I know it's a really early car, because, I don't know if you can see this through the reflection of the glass, it's got the hockey stick gear change. I think these were something like first year of production only. It's basically like you'd find in a Renault 4, so that column, that hockey stick, runs actually across the top of the longitudinally mounted engine, and then to a lever which actuates the gear selector, because these are technically front mid-engine. The engine actually sits further back with the gearbox ahead. Now these don't always get a lot of love, but I actually quite like these Mercedes. So this is the original A-Class. I think this is actually a base model one from memory. I think they did 3 specifications. This one's the classic, so we've got a grey plastic grille there. I think they did body colour and chrome depending on the model. Wheel trims as well. There's our classic badge, and then we've got these grey mirrors. Sadly, the interior looks to have a lot of grey in there as well. They actually did some really vivid colour schemes on these car interiors, very much of the time. So it's the A140, the 1.4, there was a 160 as well. And but yeah, these were quite innovative at the time. They actually had sort of a sandwich construction where in a frontal impact, the idea was that the engine would disappear underneath the chassis. Of course, there was that recall on them due to stability issues, and obviously Mercedes did make some alterations and fix that. Speaking of basic model Mercedes, we've got a 190 here, but unlike the one in the Concourse that was a 190e, which is a fuel injected, this is actually a carburetted car. A 5-door Corsa B here, and this is another merit. This one actually stands out to me because it's a 5-door in the same shade of blue as the GLS that I learned to drive in. Obviously the GLS was far plusher than this model, and obviously it was equipped with a more powerful engine as well. The one I learned in was a 1.5 turbo diesel, so probably a bit more sprightly than this one, but yeah, that's really nice to see. Or maybe something a bit older like this Honda Civic, this one being a Honda Matic as well. Now I've seen a few 480s before, but I haven't seen one quite like this, badged a 480S. The thing that really stood out to me on this car was initially I saw these side skirts and this front bumper, and I weren't sure if this was an aftermarket kit or a model that Volvo did. Obviously it's not a UK spec car, so it could well be a factory trim that we never got here. If anyone does know, please let me know in the comments, because I'd be really interested to know a bit more about this. So I've just clapped eyes on a Skoda that I remember very well, these cars launching, but never really learn very much about them. Andrew, tell us a bit about what you've got here.
So this is the Skoda Felicia Fun. It was launched in about 1997, I seem to recall. It was a limited edition from Skoda, so it's the normal Skoda Felicia truck, but the rear bulkhead is movable, and you have a rear seat, so that's what makes it special, because it's got that rear bulkhead that allows it to be a 4-seater as well as a normal car, well, normal pickup truck.
So it can be a work truck in week and your family car on a weekend?
Yeah, well, basically it's in the same day for that matter. So these were all sold with the 1.6 litre Volkswagen MPI engine. Okay. And I think it was meant to be, it was really done as a bit of a proof of concept car. It was just something to prove that Skoda at that time, which wasn't particularly exciting, could do something exciting. So I think that's why they did it in this yellow with the Volkswagen engine. I think it was meant to be more like a leisure car.
Well, that was the early days of the Volkswagen ownership, weren't it, of Skoda, I think?
Yes, so this would have still been essentially the fabric underpinnings that had been facelifted by Bertoni in 1995. I think they'd added like a structural beam in the engine bay just to give it a bit of extra torsion.
Yeah.
But it was essentially still Skoda's own design.
Yeah.
But you started to get the improved Volkswagen engineering, which was pretty noticeable. The doors clunk a bit more rather than ting, you know, and everything's a bit higher grade. And with the general trucks, Volkswagen actually sold it as a Volkswagen Caddy themselves. So it was this car just with a bit of extra soundproofing.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it was good enough for Volkswagen to put their badge on it and sell it as one of their own.
Yeah, and they made a car to sort of show everyone that Skoda was here.
Yes.
And a couple of decades on, and these are quite sought after now, aren't they?
Yeah, I believe so. These are certainly the more rare models, especially largely untouched like this one is, because a lot of them got lowered and resprayed and stuff like that until now, I think, where more people are, no, we've got to keep it and keep it original, because there's not many left on the road
Yeah,
now.
again, there'd have been a time people would have bought them as well, because they'd have probably been quite cheap, whereas obviously, again, now you're getting genuine enthusiasts that are looking for these cars. Yeah,
I think that there was a time when the price had plummeted, and now it's gone back up a bit.
Yeah.
And people are starting to restore them back
Excellent.
to their original state. I'm not, because I use it.
Yeah, which is what they were designed for. So
yeah,
that's excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Cheers. Back in the day, I remember an officer when I was in Air Cadets having an FSO Polonaise, and there weren't exactly common cars here in the UK. Martin, you're actually here with an FSO Polonaise today.
Absolutely. This is 1992 Polonaise with a 1.5 GLE. They did the 1.5 and 1.6. Basically, when I bought the car, I saw it on eBay, advertised for 2,200 quid. I bought it, took it home, popped it on the drive, and my partner drove up in her car, saw it, and couldn't believe her eyes. What the hell's that doing here? And so basically I explained to her that it was her car now.
Yeah.
And obviously she didn't want it, because they got rid of these in Poland many, many years ago. But when she realised that she was going to be going to a show in the car and she was going to be driving it, it was like completely changed her mind.
So just for context, obviously your partner's from Poland, and she was saying to me off camera she's got fond memories of actually these cars from her childhood.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what she remembers is they were incredibly reliable, and in the very, very bad weather, when they had the snow chains on them, they were one of the few cars that would actually drag themselves around. So pretty robust vehicles.
Yeah.
We've driven this one down from Huddersfield, and we've done it twice now with absolutely no issues.
So here in the UK, these were regarded a bit like with the Larders and things. There was a budget car, but in Poland, this was about as good as it got. And
absolutely, this was this was.
I mean, it was a real step up over what came before, weren't it?
The status symbol. The FSOs were status symbols.
Yeah.
So basically, really, really good. And like I say, the actual interior and that sort of thing, driving it's incredibly comfortable.
Yeah.
Motorway, if it wasn't left-hand drive, it would just be like driving a modern car.
Obviously, we did get right-hand drive ones here in the UK,
Absolutely.
but obviously we didn't get them for, they only produced them so long now.
Yes.
In other parts of the world, these cars did get developed and stayed in production for quite a long time.
Yes, well, they finished making them around about 2002, and unbelievably, they were putting the K-Series Rover in. 1.4 K series, so they were doing the I think it was a French diesel, 1.9 French diesel that they were putting in them, but at some point towards the end they were sort of they'd replaced the Fiat engines with the Rover engine, but when they were actually designed the Caro, they were expected to have a new range of Fiat engines, but Fiat, for some reason, and I can't remember what it was, wouldn't release it to them, so they basically kept the 125P engine in them.
Yeah.
So that engine continued for quite a long time. So, and the other thing about the Caro was it was the first Eastern Bloc car to actually pass the American crash tests.
All right.
So there's a few. They were a little bit more special than you expect.
Yeah, excellent. And obviously there's certainly a bit of a following for Eastern European cars today, so...
Absolutely, and we're the only FSO here.
Yeah, which is a real surprise actually, all things
Yes,
considered.
yeah.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you very much, Martin.
indeed.
Cheers.
Thank you.
We've got the last of the Sierra Sapphires, this one being an Azure. I really remember these cars when they were released. It was sort of toward the end of the run, the Mondeo was coming out or was out, and this was the car where Ford kind of just chuck a lot of the extras on. So as you can see, we've got body colour bumpers, alloy wheels, a boot spoiler, lots of extra equipment thrown on. I always liked the inside of the Sierra with that wraparound dashboard. It seemed very sort of modern and driver focused for the time. Yeah, so showing its base modelness, we've got an analog clock instead of a rev counter, and we've got manual windy windows. But other than that, this would have been quite a desirable car for the time, and they did look good, and I actually think these still look quite good even today. Now, I was hoping to speak to the owner of this car, but I have seen him earlier, but sadly we've not crossed paths again since. So for those of you who don't know what this is an AutoZam AZ1. The AZ1 was, well, the AutoZam was actually Mazda in collaboration with Suzuki. I think Suzuki may have provided the engines for these cars, as well as a few other things. Now, these are fascinating little cars. I actually quite like Japanese K cars. They're, to me, the most exciting things to come out of Japan. So they're actually small cars, and K cars, you could get everything from commercial vehicles to small hatchbacks to sports cars like this. The K cars all had a few things in common though. So this one, like most K cars, has a 650 odd cc engine, 3 cylinders and turbocharged. So there were limits on capacity of the engine, there was limits on the power output that it could produce, and there was limits on the dimensions that the cars could be as well. The AZ1 though really was the more exotic of all the K car specifications. So we had things like the Suzuki Cappuccino, which was a more traditional front-engined roadster style, but this car really did break the mould because the AZ1 had gull-wing doors for a start, and it was also mid-engined. Now there's not a lot of room in there. I think the spare wheel lives behind the driver as well, so it's certainly a more compact car. I wouldn't expect to get much luggage in there with you. But what you have got is a very, very unique looking vehicle, and definitely something a bit mad. Obviously they're very revvy little engines as well, so it really is a sports car that well, is completely dwarfed by pretty much everything else on the road. These are actually very collectible now. Now this particular one is, I believe, is actually for sale. Like I say, these are very collectible cars these days, which is obviously reflected in the price. Now, Stephen, who owns this car, actually has a YouTube channel, and he did actually make a video all about going and collecting this car, because he actually went onto the continent and drove this car back. Now, if you're interested in seeing more of this car, you want to check out James Glenn Car Sales on YouTube, and then you can, as I say, you can see a walk around video he's done of this car, and also the video from his trip when he went to collect the car. Now this is something I'm really excited to see, Renault 11, but the reason I'm so keen to see this one is it's pretty much a flagship model. It's a TXE, but it's not a normal TXE. It's a Renault 11 TXE Electronique. So it's got the 1721cc F-Series engine, which was the biggest engine they did in these at the time, and the Electronique came with a lot of interesting features. So it's got a digital instrument cluster in there. We've also got the double stack hi-fi system as well, and the fingertip radio controls, which sort of every Renault from the 2000s I think has had a standard, but back in the 1980s that was sort of a flagship feature. Now, frustratingly, again, at that time of the day, we've got quite a few gaps appearing, a lot of cars leaving. There's one car that I've literally just seen leave here that I want to have a look at, and it's a particular specification I have only ever seen in brochures, never in the metal. There was a Mark 1 Renault Clio S. Like I say, it was sort of a sportier model. It had grey plastic bumpers and things, but I think like the wheels on it, I think it had fog lamps as well, and the 3-spoke sporty steering wheel and a few other bits. Sadly that car's gone, so I'm not going to be able to show you it. Yeah, if you're watching and you do happen to own that Clio, please do get in touch, because I'd be really, really interested to see that car. As I say, I was just walking down as I saw you leaving, but it's one of those things. Anyway, one car that I can show you is this Renault 25. quite a plush interior is this one. It's got all the leather and everything pretty much like you would have found in the Baccara, just in a different colour. As I say, Renault's sort of flagship model back in the day. I think on a H-plate would probably make this maybe one of the later cars, probably only last few years of production before the Safran came out. So as you can see, we've got all the toys in there. We've got this lovely leather interior. It's definitely very, very French. A bit like that a bit like that Renault 11 TXE we've just seen as well. We've got this double stack hi-fi system as well, which is the epitome of cool in your 1980s car. Let's say thick carpeting as well in there. I think the French just really didn't know how to do luxury. Sadly, people buying luxury cars wanted a bit of badge prestige, and fortunately the Renault badge probably just didn't cut it. I think this Rover SD3 Vitesse is a car actually featured last year. One I don't think I've seen before is this 214 SLI. Being on a G-plate would make this probably one of the earliest surviving examples. But I do like it that it's got the lattice alloys as well. They're a really nice addition to these cars. Always like this shade of blue that this one's painted in as well. As I say, the SLI at this point would have been a sort of mid-spec car, and the 1.4 was the sort of entry engine. You could get the 1.4K series or the 1.6 litre Honda D series engine. Always nice to see a Citroen CX. I think this must be probably quite a late one. I do love a Citroen XM. Obviously these are the model that replaced that CX model. Now, I'll be honest, I am not much of an expert on Vauxhalls, but we've got these two Astras, and look at the paintwork on these two cars. See, one is a 1300, the other a 1600 engine, but they do look to be sort of quite plush by the standards of Vauxhall Astras. As I say, I'm certainly not an expert on Vauxhall, so if you do know anything about these and you want to pop me something in the comments down below. Nice pre-facelift Rover SD3, this one, a 213S. Something that has got my eye there over there. Look, Renault 5 GT Turbo. Okay, so the GT Turbo might not exactly be the first thing you think of when you think of FOTU, but yeah, I've always liked these cars, and from the point I first saw one of these in the showroom, in white, just like this, it was yeah, a car I always wanted. Obviously we've got it's a phase 2, so we've got the dogleg alloys, and obviously they're fully colour coded as well, just like the one in the brochure with the red carpets in there as well. Fantastic. I'm loving this Peugeot 404. I don't think I've actually seen one of these in a sort of pickup conversion before. That's really, really interesting. But equally interesting is this Peugeot 305 Estate. A long time since I've seen one of these. So these cars were always a bit of a workhorse, and I would imagine if you went to France you'd probably see a few cars very much like this, still running around, clinging on to life, and being used probably daily in many cases. So I've actually made it down to the bottom end of the field, and there are a lot of gaps, understandably. It's been a long day, and even though the show does run on a lot later this year and started earlier, obviously a lot of people aren't going to stay the entire day. Although, to be brutally honest, you still struggle to see everything, even if you was here from when the gates opened. You may have noticed I've actually had to switch from my usual filming equipment. It's been a long day, and the gear has started to sort of fail me at this point. So I'm actually shooting on a mobile phone at the moment, so if it's not coming through at the usual quality, I can only apologise. When was the last time you saw this generation of Honda Accord Aero deck? Certainly a while since I've seen one. So here we've got the Aero deck, and then next to it we've got this rather nice coupe version, which would probably be my choice of Accord. So earlier on we saw that Lancia in the concourse. Here is a version of that vehicle that we actually did get in the UK. This is Fiat's version, the Ulysses. In essence the same thing, a 7-seat MPV with all the versatility. Obviously interior wise I'd say this one probably isn't quite as plush as the Lancia. As mentioned though, we didn't actually get the Lancia version in the UK, and I would imagine probably in its native market it may have been sold as a more expensive premium version. And bang on cue, here's Citroen's version. So the only version of this car we haven't seen today is the Peugeot. It has been another fantastic event though here at FOTU, marking 10 years of this event. Of course I'll be looking to attend some more events in the very near future. I have actually got a couple of French car events booked now. So in August I will be back down at Brooklands. That's one that I've booked actually quite recently for their French Day, which last year was the first of that event, so hopefully that should be a good one. And I dare say at that event we'll see things probably a bit like this Citroen Visa perhaps, so yeah, if you like French cars, do make sure you tune in for that one. So we're also likely to see fantastic cars like this Matra Murena as well, a vehicle I've actually covered a few times now on the channel, but yeah, if you're not familiar with these, they're quite an interesting vehicle, a 3-seater mid-engine car, but I've droned on about those quite a bit in the past. I'm also actually busy at the moment getting some car reviews filmed. They're going to be released earlier to channel members. Channel memberships is actually quite a new feature that we've added to Mark on Motoring, so by all means, for the price of a cup of coffee, £2.99 per month, check that out. It's as I say, you get some early release on certain videos and possibly some additional content thrown in as well. And of course, if you haven't done so already, then do please consider subscribing as well. If you've enjoyed today's video, do give us a thumbs up, and as always, comments down below. I'm going to leave some links to some of the videos in here, so let's see. 190E review, the one that was in the concourse, check that out if you haven't done already. That was actually filmed quite a while ago, but yeah, you might enjoy that one. And let's see, maybe similar event to this one, Rustival. If you want to click up here, we'll put you a link to the Rustival video. And yeah, again, if you like Festival Unexceptional, I pretty much guarantee you're going to enjoy that as well. Well, as always, thank you very much for watching, and a big thank you to all those that have participated in interviews today. And I will catch you on another video very soon. Goodbye from me.